Andrew Yang was proposing something that some people thought was just crazy. There's no reason why would we do that?
By the way, Charles, when he first said send $1,000 to every American on stage, people laughed out loud.
Yeah, that's never going to happen. That's not how it works. Well, it is happening now for much different reasons, obviously, than what Andrew was proposing, but it is happening. So joining us to talk about that and a lot of other things that have changed for Andrew Yang is the man himself. Andrew Yang, welcome back to TMZ Live. How are you doing?
Doing as well as can be under the circumstances. Good to see you guys. Hope you're doing well too. Looks like you're in your home studios.
Yeah.
We are. First things first, you and your family good?
Yeah, we are. The kids are a little stir crazy, but happy, healthy, under the circumstances, as sound as can be.
So we got to get your reaction to this, Andrew, because obviously it wasn't meant for these circumstances, but everybody thinks of you now when they hear about this relief bill for a lot of people. I'm curious your reaction to it.
I believe that putting money into our hands is definitely the right thing to do. I thought that it was the right thing to do even before this pandemic, because more and more Americans were just living on the edge, and more jobs were getting blasted into obsolescence. And unfortunately, the pandemic has accelerated many of the things I was most concerned about in terms of the phasing out of a lot of American jobs. We were all sent home all at once, and so putting in money into our hands is an obvious step. I certainly wish that it wasn't under these circumstances, but I'm grateful that it seems like our campaign put this idea right on the table in the nick of time.
Andrew, can I get your take on this? Because I've been thinking about this a lot, that I feel like this is triggering what could be a major redistribution of wealth in this country, because so many more people who were maybe unaffected by problems with the economy are now affected. And it makes me think that if this virus would have hit 8 months ago and the election proceeded the way it did, I think Bernie Sanders might have snagged this nomination.
I thought you were going to say I might have snagged it.
Well, I knew you thought I was going to say that about you, and you know I really like you. But I think the message Bernie sent might have resonated a lot better now.
No, that's one possibility. The numbers do show that Joe has advantages over Bernie in terms of people's desire to have him in office in a crisis. But I agree with you that we're going to need to have different approaches to building an economy that works for millions of American families after the crisis ends. Hopefully, it will end eventually. Eventually we'll get a vaccine. The question is what happens between now and then. And I do think that's going to extend to our politics.
Your reaction to the convention being postponed?
Thank goodness. I mean, that was the right move. And I just hope that we have the thing in August. Moving it back from July, though, was a no-brainer.
So, Andrew, I understand that you have encountered some real prejudice because of this whole thing with, calling it the Chinese flu and whatnot.
Well, it's a tough time for all Americans, but I will say that I think for Asian Americans, the crisis is being compounded by a sense that many people look at us in public and say, maybe they don't say it, maybe they think it, maybe they don't think it, but there are a lot of associations with this virus and coming from China, and most people visually can't discern between Chinese Americans, Korean Americans, Japanese Americans, et cetera, et cetera. So for Asian Americans, it's tough because there's a higher level of racial hostility and animosity. And on some level, it's understandable because you're seeing people's way of life getting devastated by this virus. And it's very natural to look around and say, well, I need to blame someone for this. I need to put this on someone.
And it doesn't help when you have our leaders out there saying things that sort of fan the flames. So
speaking of which, I'm curious what you think about some of the states not imposing a stay-at-home order. That the president is saying it should be, state by state, that there are some states not affected, your reaction to that?
Well, certainly, if you're a governor, you have to see where the curve is going, and you'd rather be early in terms of a stay-at-home order than late. The fact is, we don't have the tests necessary to really know what the level of infection or incidence is in places that might not have already had folks show up to the hospitals. The fact is, this virus gestates for a number of days, and so all of the hospital-based data is a lagging indicator. So if you're a governor, you'd rather have a stay-at-home order go into effect early rather than late. And that's the message that we should be getting from the top down.
Yeah, and ironically, right, that would be political survival to do this early, right?
Yeah, it would be. I mean, it's both wise from a public health standpoint, and it's probably wise politically. And I want to also just throw in the fact that I started an organization, Humanity Forward, that now has pledged $1.25 million to coronavirus relief. We're putting money directly into the hands of Americans who are struggling, because the fact is there's a lot of need out there right now, and we all need to do more. Yeah, we all need to do more to try and keep people whole through this time. It's such a disastrous time for so many families.
Yeah, I remember when we talked to you a little over a month ago when you were starting that program, but that wasn't the intent, but great that you've been able to pivot. So, Andrew, we're just about out of time, but I know you are still able to keep going with your podcast through this?
Yeah, we're launching a podcast, Yang Speaks. It's going to be out in the first week of May or so. We've got some awesome guests lined up. And I have to say, we had the podcast in the works even before we all got stuck at home, but it seems more relevant now than ever. And I hope people tune in. I think it's going to be a really incredible set of conversations, and we're going to try and dig deep into issues. So it's very substantive.
Well, I got to tell you, I want to listen to your podcast because over the past 5 or 6 months, in my opinion, I really view you as one of the most forward-thinking people in public life. And I think the way you view things is so valuable for others to hear. And for one, I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. We have our work cut out for us trying to rebuild the country after this crisis. And I know, a lot of Americans are going to be right there working hard alongside us.
Thank you again, Andrew. We really appreciate everything you do. We really mean that.
Thanks, guys. Stay well, stay healthy. All the best.
And you too.
You too. All right.